Good afternoon, and welcome to What's It Gonna Take? Environmental Justice with the Levine Museum of the New South. Today we will be talking with Will Marie Medina Cortez with Humanities Action Lab. Hi, Will Marie.
Hi, Carrie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
As well as Ebony Lockett, who's the founder and CEO of Harvesting Humanity in Charlotte, North Carolina.
How you doing, Carrie? How are you,
Good.
Will Marie?
Hi, and welcome, Ebony. So I'm hoping we can start out where each of you will briefly introduce yourselves and tell us about, we have one more joining us. Hello.
Hi, I need to get in better lighting, I see. I'll adjust.
Okay, this is Camille Mays with Milwaukee Peace Garden. Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to go ahead and ask Will Marie and Ebony to briefly introduce themselves and tell us about the organization that you work with.
So I'll start us off. Hi, everyone. I am the Exhibitions and Program Manager for the Humanities Action Lab, and mainly I focus on facilitating and overseeing our Climates of Inequality project. We're currently on the second iteration of Climates of Inequality, which is titled Climates of Inequality in the COVID Crisis, Building Leadership at Minority-Serving Institutions. The Humanities Action Lab itself is a coalition of colleges and universities and organizations across more than 40 cities across the US who come together to talk about shared concerns and ask how can the histories and roots of these problems help us understand people in different places, the collective experiences, and what we need to do in order to have just futures.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carrie. And I am Ebony Lockett, founder and CEO of Harvesting Humanity. We are a local, national, and global company that engages, prepares, and positions diverse solutionaries. And we do that through a very integrated and holistic methodology. So we have STREAM, and we've really kind of taken that STEM acronym and really made it more transdisciplinary in the ways in which we live, we learn, we love, we show up, we support one another, and we are always doing our work under the frame of equity and justice.
Thank you. And I just realized an oversight, I didn't introduce myself. So I'm Carrie Peterson with the Levine Museum of the New South. I'm Senior Director of History and Exhibitions, and it has been my pleasure to work with Will Marie and with Ebony in the Climates of Inequality exhibition and installation in our gallery at 401 South Tryon Street in Charlotte. So with that, I want to move into talking more about the Climates of Inequality exhibition. Will Marie, can you tell us some about the major goal of the exhibit and what your team was hoping to accomplish with it?
Yeah, certainly. And I think if it's possible, can I share the slides I have as I talk?
Yes.
That'd be great. Fantastic. Thank you. So Climates of Inequality is the third project from the Humanities Action Lab. And so currently, including Charlotte, we have 23 localities across the globe participating in public memory projects. So the teams set out, or just to preface, right, these teams are groups of university faculty, their students, community organizations, and public spaces like the Levine, all working together to tell the story about environmental justice in that area. And so we have many community partners, university and community partners, who've all worked together. And so the value system is to ensure that students in these frontline communities, along with community organizations, are the ones telling the story of their local environmental justice issues. And so that is done through students participating in courses, community partnerships, collective exhibition, and public events from the beginning, through the inception of identifying the local story all the way to sort of the exhibition, which having that is usually like part of the last steps that people do. The exhibition is composed of multimedia stories, again, created by the students and community partners that feature oral histories, interactive maps, and slideshows, all to sort of engage the public around these discussions of a local climate issue. There's interactive features as well. And so we also invite folks to not only interact with exhibit panels, but through VR headsets and immersive video and image content. And so the exhibit also has an online component as well for those of you who have not yet visited but want to get a sneak peek. I believe I answered everything, but let me know if I missed something.
I believe I was muted. Thank you so much for that explanation. Can you also speak about the project's value system?
Yeah, so it is important that, so some of the values that the project has are about building mutual trust and respect across the teams, making sure that community organizations feel like they have authority and self-determination in telling their stories, and also ensuring that the students who participate in these stories are also from these frontline communities. So communities that have been historically and currently victimized by climate injustice, right? And are the ones usually paying or being affected to the highest degree by these institutionalized systems or deeply ingrained historical issues. So some of our values are to make sure that, these specific people are playing the role in telling the stories alongside building like mutual aid, respect, trust, and sort of instilling those values throughout the whole project from the beginning to the end.
Thank you. We have now joining us Camille Mays, Milwaukee Peace Garden. And Camille, I'd like to give you a chance to introduce yourself briefly and tell us about the organization you're representing.
Hello, everybody. I had some slight technical difficulties, so I apologize. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, in partnership with UW Milwaukee on the project. Arijit Sin, Professor Arijit Sin, is who introduced me to this project with Rutgers, and I just am in love with this project. And I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We're happy that you're here too. Mm-hmm. So the next thing I want to invite you all to talk about is the importance of understanding what environmental justice is. I want to read a quote that I think encapsulates the work of our team here in Charlotte with UNC Charlotte and the Charlotte Teachers Institute and the stories told by the students in that project. And then I'm going to start with Ebony and then Camille commenting about your work and how it relates to the theme of environmental justice. So just a moment. This quote is from The Atlantic, and it's featured on the climatesofinequality.org webpage. It says, pollution and the risk of disaster are assigned to Black and Brown communities through generations of discrimination and political neglect. The Jim Crow laws are dead and gone, but the fact that people of color are still more likely to die from environmental causes is no accident. Again, this is from Van Newkirk in The Atlantic, Environmental Racism is the New Jim Crow in 2017. So Ebony, if you could join us in telling us about the importance of your work and the understanding environmental justice.
I'll first start off just by, kind of defining it in context for people who still, because there are a lot of people, when you say environmental justice, they don't quite equate all of the range of nodes that word, that terminology touches. And so I like to tell people to think about it as the nexus of climate justice, social justice, economic justice, healthcare justice, all the ways in which justice needs to be served in order for humanity to be served. And so that to me is like a real definition that you can feel of what environmental justice is. And, you know, as the quote said, it is just a new form of racism, a new form of discrimination, a new form of death by design. And we think that some people, because of the color of their skin or their class, or their, you know, rural versus urban location, are more proximate to that fate than others. That's really what the nexus of why this work is so important and why the work we do is so important. So at Harvesting Humanity, as you said, we center the impacted. I am a member of the impacted community, and I don't speak for all impacted community, but I do voice a platform that allows impacted community to speak for themselves. And we do that through a myriad of ways, but one of the most recent ways is one through this exhibit. A part of this exhibit will highlight some of the work that we've been doing with UNCC in a separate project, but it's called Leap Forward, Learn, Earn, and Practice Forward, Building Agents of Change Through Youth and Resident Education. So a lot of impacted community sometimes can tell you, you know, there's this funny taste in my water, but can't necessarily tell you why that exists or what those chemical compounds look like or how that connects to their deteriorating health. We help bridge those gaps, and we stand in the gap of knowledge so that they can not only articulate their stories, but make sure that they are part of the solutions.
Thank you. Camille, would you also like to comment on why it's important to understand environmental justice and how it fits in with your work?
Yes. Basically, a lot of the work that we do is to encompass the way the neighborhood looks, the broken windows theory, and the way the neighborhood looks. When the neighborhood looks better, the people feel and act better overall. Their overall quality of life is better when the community looks better and when people are invested in, contributing to those things in the community. So that's a lot of the work that we do. We actually have people participate in community gardens, participate in community engaged art projects so that they can take pride and want to not pollute, want to stay engaged and connected to the community. So when they know of these disservices like the water issues or pollution or graffiti, that they are invested in those communities. Because they are so often neglected. I often say it's a tale of two cities here. In a lot of cities, they put a lot of investments and funding into like a lot of the downtown areas. And then it's a neighborhood a few blocks away with dilapidated houses, with broken windows, graffiti, crime. And all of those things bring down the element of the neighborhood and the quality of life, hopelessness, even to the people in that community. So I look at the environment as a way to shape justice. I do think it's redlining. I do think it's disparities in certain neighborhoods. You go to other neighborhoods, you wouldn't see half of the pollution or the broken windows, in some of these vacant homes, and, the lawns, the way they look, and just none of that you would see. So just really overall getting people to look at how the community looks around us, investing in ways to get the people involved in that so that they take pride in it and don't destroy it.
Thank you. You said broken windows theory. Can you explain that for our audience?
Basically, like the neighborhood, the people are treated as good as it looks in a sense. So like somebody can go in a good neighborhood, quote unquote, and then they could be in my neighborhood, but somebody may look to toss some out of the window, and then one side of town they may say, "Oh no, don't do that. This is a good neighborhood," but then drive right down a few blocks later, and if they see it looks polluted all the way around, they'll just throw a whole bag out the window. Just the concept like, oh, it looks like they must don't care about it, so why would I? Or everybody else is doing it, why I won't? It could be a garbage right, on the block, but if it's pollution everywhere, somebody will be more apt to toss it on the ground. So just breaking the mentality, giving people pride in their communities and changing that, broken windows concept.
Thank you. Thank you for that explanation. So can you all just go around and tell us what environmental injustices do you see in your own communities, or have you been impacted by in your own communities?
Well, yeah, I'll start just like with the broken windows I was just talking about. You could go on a block, maybe about 3, 4 blocks from my house, and it's about 4 or 5 houses, if not more. They're all vacant. They're probably city properties, boarded up, broken windows, and it just looked like trash. It would never be in a suburban area looking like that. And then, we often talk about the city. They'll fine us for our grass, but their properties look like trash, and I just don't see the other sides of town looking like that, you know, um, down to how our streets are in our neighborhoods. You go to suburban areas, they even have better streets, so the park systems, we have a pretty good park system here. Um, I haven't noticed much changes, although we had a park in our neighborhood that had not been redone since 1995. And I'm positive a lot of the other parks in other parts of the city were done. That's well over, a good amount of time that they didn't have adequate, new accessible playground equipment on the playground. And that park actually had when you don't frequent things, the kids and stuff, they stopped going and it was outdated, and then it eventually ended up getting burnt down. Some kids burnt up the place that was on, the lot, just because they didn't value it, because nobody valued them. They didn't want to get them, decent stuff. So they ended up in turn redoing that whole park, doing a new playground set and activating the park and having activities. And it's been pretty safe overall. Families are going back there, kids are playing there, so those are just a few, examples. And then, like I said earlier, investing so much money into public safety and beautification and just money period into certain areas like downtown, but not into some of the urban areas that are much needed with funding.
Yeah, thank you. Some of the things that you're saying, I have observed, all around the Charlotte area, as previously a professor at our historically Black college and university in West Charlotte. Um, I often would take the exit, off of the interstate to go to work, and notice that exit was almost always overgrown. The grass wasn't mowed, and every time I'm like the other exits, that go to wealthier white communities don't look like that. They're always trimmed and manicured, and it you know it definitely is a thorn in my side. But there's a great exhibition that was a public, also kind of a community curated one called Reclaim 37, which was that exit, and with a lot of the techniques that you've described, Camille. So it's relevant in all of our communities. Will Marie, would you like to add about your community, environmental injustices?
I can. So while Rutgers and the Humanities Action Lab is out of Newark, I live in Chicago. And so I live on the north side of Chicago, which is generally treated a lot better than my south side, neighbors. And so there's a lot of injustices between, how the north side of our city gets access to different um, retail shops, right? And the south side of our city gets a lot of industry and warehouses moved into neighborhoods, which causes pollution, poor treatment of water systems. There's been a lot of discussion lately around still removing old lead pipes. And so, out of my own curiosity, I got my water tested. And so I'm okay, but that's generally, again, an issue that's not affecting a lot of North Side residents and is still a problem within the South Side of Chicago. So I think a lot of the injustices I see are really related to that dichotomy of, one part of our city gets treated a lot better. It's more, white, has a lot of diversity in different neighborhoods, but the South Side of our city, which is predominantly like Black and brown peoples, don't always get the same kind of treatment or access to different resources.
Yeah, thank you. I think you both touched on, that place-based feeling of displacement, because even when investments happen, because here in Charlotte, we have corridor investments, which are wonderful to see some of those much needed improvements. But when people cannot afford to live in the places that are being, upfitted with EV chargers and all the things that really are representations and iconography of wealth and access, because some people just can't afford an EV as much as we would like to have one. And so those things, when we talk about those intersections, we're talking about the fact that you're intentionally planning and designing for more industry, which, like you said, Ville Marie, is more pollution. It increases the urban heat. We know what happens when it gets hot. People get violent. So all of the things are really part and parcel compound problems of the same nose. And if we don't look at it as a holistic issue and think about and focus on those solutions that, by the way, community have the solutions that are needed for community, but oftentimes they don't have the resources or the access to the resources. And the moment those resources come to their town, for them that have been there historically, that means we have to leave. This isn't for us. And so we think about even how that connects to the economic injustice. So you have, children who aren't learning what they need to become successful entrepreneurs to even bring about this new clean energy transition. How do we make sure that we're giving our kids equitable access to education, equitable access to technologies that are going to make it fruitful, to have the neighborhoods that Camille and Ville Marie have talked about, to be able to walk in pride and say, I am the engineer who built that structure there, or who put that solar grid up there. We have to get back to a holistic, a solutions focused understanding of what it's going to take to advance humanity.
Thank you. One of the partners on the Charlotte project for Climates of Inequality is the Charlotte Teachers Institute, speaking about the education component. And UNC Charlotte's content is really focused on showing how teachers, the education system, and students are really at the front line of these efforts when it comes to climate inequality, climate racism, and then environmental justice. That education component being foundational to moving these things forward. And so with that in mind, how can people learn more about your work, and how can people start supporting it?
Yeah, I will jump in. I will say I am truly grateful that I am working in proximity to community that I've worked with since I moved to Charlotte in 2007. And so I do not neglect to say I don't do this work alone. We have many, many partners who walk alongside us, sometimes in front of us, sometimes to give us the access that we can't get our hands on, because we are a for-profit company. And I have to tell people all the time, just because Harvesting Humanity does good work, it doesn't mean we have to be a nonprofit. There's a way to do good work and be profitable. And I think really breaking and busting down that corporate model and that capitalistic model, it's not always about the dollar exchange. So a lot of times our partners will say, we have a space here, we can give you our space. That in-kind donation means the world, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do the work we do. So, it's many, many partners who do that work. I could name a few, but then I'd feel like I'm sliding any one of the numbers. But I say that's one of the solutions. We have to do better with really coalescing our resources and really making sure that we're lifting from the bottom up. And that means those schools that are we know aren't getting the educational equity funding that needs to happen. We need to be out there championing for things like the Leandro Plan here in Charlotte, in North Carolina, and making sure that those schools are resourced according to their need. And that's a collective effort with schools, organizations, private, public. It's all hands on deck when we talk about educating our next generation for the future that we see ahead of us.
Well, I shifted my work. It's an interesting twist, because I am focused on environmental justice. It's in a different way. I focused on green spaces and just the condition of the communities. And I'm still focused on that. However, in the process of finding out and talking to community, I realized the community needs healing first. They need a lot of healing in order to even want or be inspired to do some of these things. So, although I do a lot of the work right now, I'm doing a lot of work around wellness and mindfulness and getting people into green spaces, into the green spaces in the community, so that they can value these spaces in the community and find them as sacred places. So right now, I'm just spreading a message of mindfulness, wellness. I do the singing bowls. I do sound baths. I've been doing those virtually in different communities, looking for support to do those virtually or in different places. I've been out to Cal State University, one of the other partners with this Rutgers project. And so I'm sorry, I have a little background noise, but we've been doing work between the universities. So I'm gonna be out, hopefully I'll be out to Charlotte or North Carolina, one of the other schools in other cities to do a sound bath with you all. But just looking for support, just spreading messages of self-healing, self-care, and getting connected to the space in your communities so that people can take pride in the spaces and then want to invest some of these things that we're talking about, want to work, play, and live in some of the neighborhoods that we're talking about. So I'm on all social media. I'm on Instagram, Facebook. You can look up Peace Garden Project, MKE, or my name. Anywhere you want to find me. I'm on LinkedIn. Looking for any ways to connect with people with just really healing our outdoor spaces, really creating green spaces in community and art in community and healing projects surrounded around that. So yes, I'm all in. Looking forward to working with anybody who reaches out.
I'm just going to tap in because I think Camille said a word there, healing. I see a lot of similarities in the way that we work. In addition to the work I do, I'm the board chair for the Rosa Parks Farmers Market that operates on the historic west side of town. And again, when we talk about healing spaces, oftentimes our green spaces also become places that certain people don't feel like they are welcome. So how do we not only make them healing spaces, but spaces of welcome, and spaces where, again, people do get to age in place. They don't have to visit that nice park across town. They have that nice park in their backyard, or they have that nice park right next door. And so, I thank you for that word, because we definitely all need a healing, and we need to continuously be in the mode of radically healing ourselves and healing our community.
Well, it's important for me to say gratitude.
I can share a little bit. So if you want to keep up with the Humanities Action Lab and our Climates of Inequality project, we have a website, climatesofinequality.org, where you can visit and interact with the media and the stories created by all of our local partners, including those from Charlotte. And we hopefully have more local stories coming. I will say also, just want to reiterate, in a different way, what Camille and Ebony are saying, that what I've found is most important is, if you want to participate, right, it is interacting in your local community, your neighborhood, your block is where you start off with, whether it is small acts of kindness and generosity through mutual aid, buying someone groceries, helping someone cross the street. It starts off simple, but your local community organizations are often plagued by, challenges their own and barriers that are really hard to overcome, such as access to resources, people, money. And so that's why, our projects are sometimes helpful, because we have the university resources to leverage for these community partners. And then I want to, leave everyone with this, idea. Anyone can be an environmental justice advocate. Anyone can be an environmental justice leader. It's not just the people in this room, it is everyone. We all have our own stories to tell about our own experiences with environmental justice throughout our own lifetime. And so by sharing these stories, you are also bringing to light all the intersections that occur when we are experiencing these different things in our neighborhood.
Thank you. And thank you all who have been commenting as we go along. And if there are any questions we might be able to address for you, you can put them in the comment chat and we will try to get to them. We may not, but maybe we'll be able to follow up with you or design programs in the future to address your questions. So let's talk about working with Humanities Action Lab and the Climates of Inequality partners on this exhibition. Camille, would you tell us about your experience participating in making Milwaukee's part of the exhibition?
So it was real cool working on this particular project because a lot of universities, I don't feel like, I don't know, it's just been different university work with Rutgers and UWM. It's a lot of systemic things going on with the schools here. I'm in one of the most racist cities in the United States here in Milwaukee. I don't know if y'all knew that. Yes. So it's really exciting to have a university willing to tell the stories of the community. And to let us lead it and not them. They came into the community and I really asked, like, what are y'all doing here? What are you going to do after you do this project? And so Regent has been invested ever since. And instead of them coming in and getting what the students needed, they came in to see what we could do together collectively with providing the students the information and the access they wanted, but also for them not to just come in and be one and done with our community after they did whatever, project or paper or whatever. So Regent has ended up doing a lot of projects that end up assisting us. So one example is working with the students in urban planning and architecture. One of the projects that they did, they asked about the needs and we were talking about environmental justice. So we ended up adding some upgrades to one of our community gardens. They got funding, they got students, we got some planters, we got a stage going, we got some tables, all because we pulled our resources together. And the university had students and funds to provide the materials that we didn't have, to do. So we took it and we really built a partnership, a friendship with the students, with a region, with the school going forward. We've been working with a region now 7 years. One project turned into 7 years. And so much opportunity with Rutgers and the Humanities Action Lab. As I stated earlier, Cal State University just had me come out last fall. That was another connection, from that. This is another connection from that. I've had countless opportunities and new partnerships out of this Rutgers project. Working with Rutgers too, them doing things to really just the care and concern they have for the people in the community and the relationships they've built with community partners. Even when we went to Newark and we went on the tour, I'll never forget, it was called the Toxic Tour. And we went out in the community and they really got down to some of the issues in the community and put it in your face. It's nothing you can deny. It's nothing you forget once you look at the stories of the people on this project. So I think it's really important to get the stories out to spread awareness. We hear about things, we read about them, but when you see these stories from the Humanities Action Lab, it really, gives you an in-depth look at some of these communities. So it's really been a pleasure and an honor working with such a project. And I thank you.
Thank you. I saw some slides from your project's content going across the screen. We have so here at the Levine, we had the pleasure of working with Ebony because she is a local activist in Charlotte for environmental justice, and we'd like to play you a video of her poem that is a poem that she wrote called "Climates of Inequality" that we feature at the Levine Museum as part of Climates and Equality exhibit. Looks like we might have to come back to the video of the poem reading by Ebony. Sorry about that. Few tech challenges, but they can be overcome. So let's just talk more about the experience working with the exhibit. Ebony, why don't you just describe it from your side?
So it was like a coming home, because I am an educational practitioner and I taught for many years. So getting as proximate as I could with the young people that were engaged in the exhibit was just, it was priceless, one, and it helped to deepen those relationships. But it also, it was hard history that we're unraveling and interrogating and investigating. So there was some hurt and some anger, and all of the things came up as you're reliving not only what you're seeing in the stories of others, but what you have lived yourself. And that kind of trauma, as going back to that word, it must be healed. You must deal with it. You must sit with it. You must cry through it. You must do all the things, but you cannot give up hope, because then we're hopeless. And what happens when we're hopeless? We stop working. We stop moving. We stop thinking that there's a possibility for a new tomorrow. And I always want to know that there's a possibility for a better and a brighter tomorrow. There's a deeper reckoning with that hard history, and that we're going to come out on the right side of this thing. We're going to, even as local government, as educators, as, whatever role we play in this thing called life, we're going to dig our heels in and we're going to make it right. We're going to make it equitable. We're going to make it just. And so, I was torn between those emotions, the hurt, the anger, even the backlash, because when you talk about certain things, especially when you talk about environmental injustice, there's big business on the other end of that conversation. And there's a lot of, possibility that, you may never work in this town again if you say the wrong thing, but it must be said. And so you go out with the courage to say it anyway. And I think, going through that gamut of emotions, I was really grateful to have partners, of all kinds of diversity. We had UNC Charlotte and Dr. Tina Scholl, who made sure that, we were centered in this exhibit. You had institutions like Charlotte Teachers Institute, which I've been a member of when I was in the classroom, allowing us to create our own curricula and allowing our stories and our student stories to be centered in that curricula. And that was especially important for me because I taught ELA and humanities. And oftentimes when you're talking about the literary canon, we aren't represented. We may be a story in a thick textbook. And so being able to pull into other experiences and pull into other, tap into other resources like the maps, in a very tangible way, and talking about redlining in a way that not only says this is what historically has happened, let's look at the patterns of what's happening now, and let's halt this thing before we go too far. I think all of those things, kind of played into my experience with the exhibit. And of course, it is here in Charlotte from May to September. And so some of the customers that I have, include big systems. like the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. It includes our partners who do a lot of powerful work on the ground around environmental justice, Soul Nation. So we'll be able to get to take young people through that organization and leaders of schools through this exhibit, and then have a real conversation about what does it look like moving forward for us to be solutionaries with regards to climate and environmental justice. So, you know, I remain hopeful. I remain hopeful because I know we have the power and the potential, and most importantly, we have the resources to get it right.
That's wonderful. Yeah, so we use a term that we say is coined by Ebony, solutionaries, in our exhibition. And this is a real part of the hopeful content that you speak of as you go through the exhibit, the resilience and the solutions that come from community, like Camille was saying too. So I think we're ready to roll your poem now. Here we go. Sorry again, and please accept our apologies. The file is just not cooperating with us, but I believe it's available. Will be available. It's definitely available in Climates of Inequality. Here is a link. We will post a link here for you to see it. Thanks, Will Marie, for adding that in our chat.
Carrie and Ebony, how far is Charlotte from Raleigh? I was just there, and I'll be there back and forth a lot. My parents are there.
Awesome. I do a lot of work in Raleigh. It's a 2-hour drive, so let's definitely connect.
Yeah, let's connect. I'll be doing some wellness work there, so I would love to connect with you.
Absolutely. I look forward to it.
That sounds amazing. Yeah,
Carrie, if you'd like, I can recite it or read it,
okay.
because I'm not my unfortunately I can't remember things as well as I did before.
That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go ahead and I'll share it. It is called Climates of Inequality, and again, it was inspired by the exhibit. When you get to see the image, you will see that it is actually an intentionally taped with nature behind us. It is taped with the powerful art of so many community members, Georgia Nakima Lee being one of them. I know Sloan did some work on that. Just some powerful artistry behind us. And that is one of the spaces that is part of the historic West End that has experienced a lot of not only industry impact, but also at what we call displacement impact. And so I will just share this in the heart, in the hopes that you can hear and feel the intentions. I hope that you can hear and feel my hampered breath, so you can understand the weight of what I am fighting for. Green acres, nature and trees, clean, accessible water, lower rates of disease. I am fighting to save our sacred waters. I'm fighting for a lower probability that asthma will claim the lives of sons and daughters in communities that look like me and mine. Blacks are 3.9 times more likely than whites to die from asthma. I am fighting to save our children. We remember that it took Black bodies for us to begin to acknowledge environmental racism. How many will it take for us to dismantle it? We remember that it took white limbs to document through photographic lens what resistance looked like, felt like, feels like. We must resist. You ask us to build, and we remember highways plowed right through us. Highways have histories too, whispers Ida B. Wells. Well, history hasn't always been so kind here along the crescent of the Queen City. Here, the air ain't too clean and the skyline ain't so pretty. Here, wealth is an elusive spark along the tilting arc of this Queen City. We must resist. We remember asphalt buried underneath scorching bare feet, poured within and in between these red-lined streets. Asphalt all around us. How can that be just, and how can that be justified? Looks more to me like gentrified genocide than revitalization. It feels more to me like economic exclusion than restoration. It sounds more to me like urban removal than urban renewal. Who is being renewed and who is being removed? We must resist. We must sit in our bodies long enough and strong enough and quiet enough to see it and hear it and taste it and touch it and feel it. So much so that the embodiment of it is our own experience. That for which we feel is constant pain and pressure, we never hesitate to resist. We must resist the environmental injustice that runs up and down these highway lanes. We must resist the smell of money that travels through rural roads and hog waste plains. We must not let history continue on repeat again and again. We must resist. We must resist nature bulldoze for another sky-high sky rise in the new Southern QC. This is our current reality, and these are the climates of inequality. And I share that to really share the context that, again, although that history is hard, it is hard history for us to bear. But it is not necessary, as Maya Angelou says, that we repeat it. We can stop and halt these assaults on humanity.
Look at Camille. Thanks, Ebony. It's always just such a powerful message. I think that resonates with all of us in many ways. We really appreciate you and your just openness and willingness to share your artistry and craft with us. We really appreciate it. So we have a question from our comments, and I am scrolling back to it. And it is, there it is. What is one story of success from your work that you lean on to help when the work gets more challenging?
I think I'll just kind of dig in. Our most recent story of success, again, in our UNCC project, or I don't call it project, I like to call them experiences, because project, I grew up in a housing project, and it just seems like such a toxic and sterile word, like, you know, because a project has a start and an end date, and I want us to continue loving each other and loving on each other forever. So it was the Leap Forward project. I'll go back to that because we took students from Title I schools who probably had not expressed that they had not been in a university lab before, who expressed that they had never really thought about their impact on the environment, who had expressed that they never really understood why every friend that they had or every other friend seemed to have asthma. So we gave them not only the working and provided them training to not only think about the working knowledge of what would be needed to become active researchers and active advocates for our environment and for one another, but we also gave them the confidence to know that they belong in those spaces, and that these weren't, you know, how can you live 5 minutes from a university and never have gone onto that university's campus or never have interacted with that university? It seems almost, you know, ridiculous to me, but that was the experience of some of these scholars. And so just really going back to what Camille said, giving them the tools that they needed to empower themselves, because I always say we can't empower anyone. We can give them the tools and hope to inspire them to empower themselves. And so really being intentional, I think, about the way we handle our young people, especially because they're experiencing a lot right now, and they need us, and they need us collectively to step up. And I always say, you know, education is not what happens in the brick and mortar alone. It's all of our responsibility, and it is one of our ways forward.
Well, this is kind of, I look at myself as the story of success for other people. I'm just a regular person in the community who started being interested. I'm not a professor. I'm not at an organization. I do have an organization. People always say, you have an organization, but I look at it as just me doing work in my community. Um, my son was murdered in 2019 after I started doing this work, and I just felt like really discouraged and disheartened with all of the things that I do and everything. And so I often would tell people I never gave up because the very thing that knocked me down is what picks me up. And I look at the community work in the same way. Like the very thing that knocks us down, that discourages us, is the very reason we can't give up. That's the very reason we have to keep going. It's people in the community who I motivate because they see me having a voice, me stepping out, doing some of these things. So that's allowed a lot more residents to become empowered, a lot more of them to start their own projects. Like I don't want to be the one and done and do it all person or the go-to person. I want to empower other community members as well to be the voice and to take action. So that's what I think about. Like I look around, like as I sit here on the panel with you all, and I don't have a degree or anything, and I'm able to do impactful work in the community. That's my story that motivates me, knowing from other people in the community that I encourage and motivate them, and looking at all of them and knowing that we all inspired more people to do that, and looking around at all the changes when I drive through my block and thinking about how the students came in that one day for that one project and we turned it into so much more. And so that's, I guess, me, the story of me and my partners and residents, and how we built a relationship with the region and the students. Those are my friends. Like they hit me up offline outside of this work. They check on me. They came to support me. They came to my son's vigil, my son's funeral. They've uplifted me. They've given me flowers when, just between the awards. So I just appreciate that. And that's the story that keeps me going. Things like this keep me going. So thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have some comments that we want to talk about. Will Marie, did you want to add
Oh,
on?
yeah. To the question that was just said, or to a comment? Oh, either one. Okay. Well, I can just briefly say that on my end, right, I'm not on the ground doing the local work, but for me, what's really rewarding when things are challenging is that um, participation in these projects and in creating local stories has really changed the lives of the people who have participated in them, and in hearing how they feel like they have not only become, local leaders, but they have found healing through some of, the participation, and really have found a passion in trying to address environmental justice. That keeps me going, knowing that this work is fruitful and will continue to live on in different ways after the end of this. I will say I saw in the comments, someone mentioned Love Canal, and I thought that was so interesting. I don't remember much from what I learned about Love Canal, but I will say that I often think it's remembered in our society as one of the first instances of environmental justice because it was a predominantly white community. But I will say environmental justice has its roots in indigenous resistance. And as we see here with the Charlotte story, right, back to the history of displacement of people for industry, whether that's, I think like ore mills, other kinds of factories. So, environmental justice is just so much deeper in our history than what we're told about in more popular culture. And so I think, these local stories really do a great job of like unearthing that history and bringing to light stories that have not been yet to be told, so that, we can all remember and make these connections across the nation.
Thank you. And as we get closer to the end of our time together, I just want to remind everyone that we do have a survey posted in the chat and in the comments, and your feedback is so important to us. It is very important to us knowing what direction, to take our work in and who we should be supporting in this work. And it's also important for the continued funding, of these works. So please take a few minutes and give us your feedback. We're very grateful for that. Unfortunately, it looks like we lost Camille. But I do think we're at the end of our time. So I just want to thank you all. Is there any last thing that you'd like to say before we go? Either of you?
I think I would just echo the message of the exhibit and where the exhibit ends with you. And whoever that you is that is watching, that will be live streaming or viewing later, like what is your place in this work, and how are you going to take up the mantle for that place? Because we all have work to do.
Yes, I think
could
we
not
can
have
all
said it
echo.
better. Yeah.
Yes.
That's perfect. Thank you. So we have another What's It Gonna Take coming up on May 25th. And we would love to have you all join us for that. And please come out to the Levine Museum of the New South if you're anywhere in the Charlotte area, and go through the Climates of Inequality exhibit and learn about environmental justice and injustice in Charlotte. It's quite the education. And when you're looking for some way to get involved, I think this is the foundation for finding that. And feel free to reach out to me or anyone on staff at the museum. If you ever have a chance to collaborate with the Humanities Action Lab on any project, I encourage you to take it. It's an amazing organization because they just do. When you're in that space where you wish someone would just tell you what to do. Well, it's Humanities Action Lab's action. And thank you all for joining us today. Appreciate your time, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Camille, I will be in touch.